We get g3 and g5, the opening moves of this stunning game between Hikaru Nakamura with white and Vladimir Fedoseev with black. Both blitz beasts. This is titled Tuesday, early event, 2nd of January 24, and not only is the game stunning, but the checkmate is so unique and beautiful that I've never even seen it in my entire life. We need to name this one together, right? So we now get e4 from Hikaru. He fights for that central space. This weird moves on the board, so he is better. They do what they want these days in the opening. Excuse me, this might happen today. We've got COVID in the house right now. If you're not yet wearing a mask, maybe put one on. I am breathing into the mic. So d5 now played on the board. Now it looks natural to take this pawn, but then you bring the queen into the game, it hits this rook. So instead, knight c3. Bishop g2 was better because now you've allowed d4, which was played. If you pop a pony on d5, well, you're running into e6. That one's trapped out of nowhere. So Hikaru stumbles backwards and now e5 played. We can see why this is good for black. You've completely taken the center. d3, disgusting pawn structure for this bishop. That is a bad one, and that's why after knight c6, Hikaru goes bishop h3. He's trying to exchange his bad bishop for this one here, although the computer hates it. It actually wants to take. Allow knight recaptures, let Hikaru get rid of it, but then you go g4, the knight stumbling backwards, it's horrendous. But g4 immediately played, also a good move. Now the bishop retreats to g2, we get h5, look at the bind which Fedoseev has set up already, those are some good eggs. Now we get h3, Hikaru looking for some tricks, this rook undefended, and I'd be playing bishop g7 in a flash here, but Fedoseev goes h4, a more unusual idea. You can see why he's a real pro in the dark arts of blitz. Now, there's pressure on the pawn structure here, so Hikaru takes like this, preventing this pawn on capturing, or you take the rook. So bishop takes on g4 played, and now f3. Never play f3. But here, Hikaru's looking to drive that one back and then go g4. Shut down the king side, but what a horrendous piece this is. And he's just saying, right, I'm going to try and hold on for dear life, look for tricks later in the game. Because in a classical game, you'd be squashed. Now bishop h6 played. Computer hates it. Watch the evaluation bar reacting. And it's interesting because again, you're swapping the bad bishop. Usually that's positionally desirable, but here, if Hikaru takes, which he didn't, it actually helps him unravel, because then he can go queen d2, castles queenside, but he misses it. He develops this knight. What a wonderful square. Joking, of course. Now we see bishop takes on c1, the queen recaptures, this knight develops, queen d2, queen d6, and Hikaru plays very bizarrely and ambitiously. a3, top way to go, then castles queenside, but Hikaru goes c4. What's this all about? Because it allows Fedoseev to capture en passant. He bellows en passant at the top of his voice in his best French accent. You can see it on camera because of course in over the board tournaments you have to do so. So he's getting some practice in. We now see pawn recaptures and castles queenside. Huge pressure on d3. So rook d1 defends, very natural, and now f6, the top move. Ben Feingold wouldn't approve, but here it makes sense. You cover g5, give this bishop some room to maneuver. But queen a3 played looks so natural, activating, hitting pawns, opening the eyes of the rook against the queen. But there's a sequence of moves that Hikaru finds, starting with knight g5, that unravels the attacking idea. The bishop hit, the pawn structure about to be mangled. So bishop c4 played, using the pin, trying to pick up this pawn, but how about this for a defensive resource? queen to c1. That's exceptional. There's no time to pick up the pawn with either piece or you lose your queen. If you move the queen away, say to a5, well then you take the bishop because now there's no longer a pin. Therefore you have to take the ladies off the board. Knight recaptures, and look at that. You've defended both pawns at the same time, the knight and the rook doing it. Incredible play. So the bishop's now got to retreat. There's no longer a pin. But first, this move is flicked in. Great move. You can't hop forward, of course, or bishop takes. And if you take here, allowing takes here, well, that's better for black. So instead, the knight retreats home. It's like one of those travellers. They say to mum and dad, see you later, I'm off on my travels, only to return meekly home. Broke, penniless, back to square one. Not fun. This bishop now does the same. Please excuse me. And now here, look at the pieces on the board, right? There's one piece that turns into a star here, and it's one of the last ones you'd expect. It comes with King F2, a delayed diagonal bomb cloud. Of course, a pure bomb cloud is King to E2. And somehow, after Knight G6, King to E3, this one is turning into the star of the show. It's like the goalie in a game of football or soccer. Should be back in the net, but suddenly it goes on one, out into the pitch. What's going on? Not only covering this square, but after Rook D6, preparing to double, D4. That pawn break only possible because of this attacking piece. It's getting mixed up, thinks it's the queen. Now we get Knight A5, looking to hop into that weakened C4 square. So D5 from Hikaru. He plows boldly forth, and now the bishop doesn't yet move. Instead we get Knight C4 check first. Now I'm trying to work on this pronunciation. Zwischenzug. So pronouncing the Z like a TS in tsunami. I'm doing my best out here, and it's trying to get a mistake to happen. If you go King D3, yay, let's attack the pony. Oh crap, Knight B2 check, and you lose your rook. So of course Hikaru doesn't do it. These guys are too experienced. They've been playing for 20 odd years, since they were kids. They know those tricks. Now Bishop D7 comes, looking to activate onto those squares, and Bishop F1. Hikaru just unraveling here. That horrible piece coming back into the game. Now we get Knight B2, Rook hit, slides to D2, and Knight A4. Going after the C3 pawn. Fedoseev keeping up with Hikaru on the clock. He's doing alright. C4 now played, and Hikaru completes the side quest of putting as many pawns as possible onto light squares. Exceptional stuff. Now we get C6, trying to undermine that center. Knight B3 played, activating. Hikaru unraveling the pieces like a cat with a ball of string. B6 played, covers C5, and now Bishop D3. Hikaru thinks he's playing checkers for just a brief moment, but soon remembers he's at the chessboard. Always play King B8, Rook C1, Rook C8, and here comes the king. It's bored, it's coming back into the game. C takes on D5, and E takes, a much trickier move, opening the eyes of the bishop. Finally, this one that was dead is come back to life, reincarnated, hits the knight, it retreats, and after Knight F2, Hikaru heading here, he's fully achieved the impossible and activated the dead pieces. He's like Harry Houdini covered in Vaseline. Now we get F5, black breaking in the center, pawn captures, bishop captures. Hikaru takes obligingly, allows this one to hop with check, but hang on a minute. King E4. That keeper needs to get back in the net, but wait, it's attacking two pieces. How do you defend both? You don't, so the knight hops forward, check, and now the pawn drops. Hikaru has won a pawn, hits the rook, it comes to H6. That king has no right to be in the opposition half, should be in the net. You know, normally with this many pieces still on the board, this would be so risky, but amazingly it works. The Silicon Overlord purring. White doing better, plus 1.1. So Knight E4 played, and Rook F8 was the best move, pressuring this isolated pawn here. Excuse me. But instead we see the check. The king comes back to D4. Okay, it went far enough. Now Knight F5 check, King D3, h3, black looking for the counterplay, and Hikaru steps in front, preparing to double the rooks. Now you can go here as a defensive effort, but then Hikaru starts activating knights and king, pushing these past pawns. So instead, Fedoseev goes active. Such a good policy in blitz. Now we see the rooks double and b5. He reveals his point of putting the rook on the d file. Hikaru now takes the pawn. Rook captures, and this is stunning maneuvering. Check. King goes, you win this pawn, and now this one's dropping too. Can't be saved, so Hikaru goes active for his part, springing these knights into the game. We see rook takes on d5, and now rook h7, slicing and dicing that 7th rank. This knight comes back, a defensive octopus. Hikaru checks, and we don't see king a8, or else you're going to fork town on this square. Population Fedoseev, game is lost. So the king steps this way, this knight now hops forward, and it induces a mistake. You should go rook e5 here to cover the e6 square, but instead king d8, the single most horrendous move that could have been played, because it allows this check with tempo against the king, and unbelievably it's mate in 1 no matter where you go. So in the game we see king c8. If the king steps this way, then by all means test your skills. I reckon you've got this one in you. You can go with this knight, give the check, and it's actually mate. You don't even need to worry about the fact you're about to pick up the rook. And if you step this way, well then the checkmating finish is this. How beautiful is that? Stunning. I've gone Bob Ross on it.
Then we'll fluff it a little, like so, and very gently. One hair and some air. Whisper light. This is a very simple painting that you can do even if you've never painted before. So from all of us here, I'd like to wish you happy painting, and God bless, my friend.
Plenty of paint on the board here. Now this is very similar to the Arabian mate, but that's just with a knight and rook. Now I guess you'd call this a Vukovic mate, because you've got knight, rook and a supporting piece, but usually the supporting piece is like a king or a pawn or a bishop. I've never seen two knights supporting like that. King in the center of the board, not chased to any corner. That is just a stunning one out of nowhere. Hikaru's invented this one, deserves to be called Gigakaru or something like that, right? I hope you enjoyed this stunning game, and if you want to see another exceptional one, check out the video on screen, and I hope to see you again soon.